The coastal wind howled through the empty streets of a small Oregon town, dragging cold rain in sheets that soaked through skin and bone. The sky was a deep steel gray and the pavement glistened like glass under the street lamps. It was an ordinary winter evening, at least for the rest of the world, but for Amara Collins, it would be the night everything changed forever. Amara had just finished her night shift at the hospital cafeteria. Her white apron, still tied around her waist, clung to her from the downpour. She moved quickly across the parking lot, clutching a worn-out backpack in one hand and the tiny fingers of her daughter Lena in the other, a bright-eyed 7-year-old with tangled curls and a gaze far wiser than her years. "I'm cold, Mama," Lena said, her voice trembling. "No, baby. Just a few more steps to the car," Amara replied, her tone soft despite the exhaustion weighing her down. She was used to nights like this, tired, wet, and full of silent prayers. What she didn't know was that fate was waiting for her just a few feet away, crouched beside a car where a stranger knelt in a puddle, struggling to gather groceries spilled across the concrete. One moment, one choice. A single mother bends down in the rain to help a stranger, unaware that this small kindness would echo louder than she ever imagined. Rain fell in a steady rhythm, the soundtrack of a quiet town wrapped in cold mist. Amara walked quickly, her head ducked against the wind, but Lena suddenly stopped and tugged her arm. "Mama, that man dropped his groceries." Amara looked up. Through the curtain of rain, she saw a man kneeling on the wet pavement. A large paper bag had torn apart, and its contents were scattered. Organic grapes, multigrain bread, an expensive bottle of olive oil teetering near the curb. He was trying to gather everything, soaked to the bone, his dark coat heavy with rain. Without hesitation, Amara turned. "Come on, Lena," she said, guiding her daughter toward the man. "Oh my, let me help," Amara called, dropping to her knees beside him without a second thought. Rain drenched her shoulders, her apron clinging to her like skin, but she didn't care. The man looked up. In the dim streetlight, his eyes glimmered a vivid, impossible blue. Weary, distant, and lost. "It's okay, I can," he started, but Amara was already reaching for the arugula, carrots, and artisanal cheese. "My daughter's cold, so the faster we finish this, the better." Her voice was soft, leaving no room for argument. "You can use my umbrella," Lena said brightly, holding up her tiny purple cat-themed umbrella over his head. And he froze. No one had offered him something like that in years. He stared at the little girl, then at Amara, as if trying to understand why these strangers would care. "Thank you. Truly," he murmured. "I'm Ethan, Mara, and this is Lena." Her smile, even in the rain, warmed him. They worked in sync, almost effortlessly. Their hands brushed as they both reached for the same wine bottle. A jolt passed through Amara's fingers. Not from the cold, but something else, something long forgotten. He looked just as startled. So did she. "Do you shop here often?" Ethan asked, trying to break the silence. "Every Monday night, after my shift at the hospital cafeteria." She glanced at the mess, repacking items into a plastic bag she carried, a habit of someone used to making do. Ethan noticed that too. He also saw the deep fatigue in her eyes, the kind that comes not from work, but from life itself. "May I help you carry these to your car?" "You don't have to." "Please, you just rescued my dinner from drowning." Amara laughed, a clear, musical sound that cut through the storm. Something inside Ethan loosened. "Well, when you put it like that." They walked through the nearly empty parking lot, toward an old sedan parked in the farthest corner. Lena skipped between them, chatting about her mom's gingerbread cookies. Ethan silently studied the car, the taped rear window, the dented sides, and the woman beside him, who walked like a queen heading to her carriage despite her soaked shoes and frizzy hair. He had never seen anyone more beautiful. Not runway beautiful, real beautiful, the kind that slows your heartbeat. "Thank you, Ethan," she said as they reached the car. "No, thank you." He looked at her deeply. I got very lucky tonight." Amara smiled and closed the door. She had no idea that the man she'd just helped was the owner of the entire supermarket chain. Ethan returned to that grocery store 3 times over the following week. He didn't know why, or rather, didn't want to admit why. Each evening, he walked in like an ordinary customer, picked up a few random items, wandered the aisles slowly, scanning for a familiar pair of brown eyes he couldn't stop seeing in his mind. But Amara didn't come. Not on Tuesday, not on Friday. Just when he was about to give up, the next Monday night he spotted it. The old silver sedan, parked at the far end of the lot. His heart gave a quiet jolt, a sensation he thought he'd long forgotten. Amara stepped out, holding Lena's hand. She wore a faded knit coat, her hair tied back, her face etched with fatigue, yet under the store's soft lights, she looked almost luminous. Ethan froze for a moment, just taking it in. He didn't approach right away. Instead, he entered the store, grabbed a basket, and lingered by the bread aisle, the same one where their hands had touched days ago. When she appeared at the end of it, holding a few items with Lena at her side, he stepped forward. "You owe me a bottle of olive oil," he said lightly. Amara paused, then laughed. "Are you stalking me?" "Not quite, more like hoping. Mondays seem luckier this week." Lena squealed. "You're alive! I thought the rain washed you away." Their laughter echoed down the quiet aisle. "You still carry your kitty umbrella?" Ethan asked. "Yes, but Mom says I shouldn't give it to strangers again." Amara smiled at her daughter, then looked back at Ethan. "Persistent, aren't you? I learned that the things worth having don't come easy." They walked the store together, not by accident, but with a rhythm that felt oddly familiar. Ethan dropped a few extras into her basket: cocoa powder, raw honey, a bar of dark chocolate. "Gifts for Lena," he said. "You don't have to bribe the kid," Amara teased. "Actually," Ethan replied, "I think I'm trying to impress her mom." Silence stretched between them. Amara glanced at him, her eyes caught somewhere between surprise and hope. At the checkout, Ethan paid the bill before Amara could protest. "Not fair," she muttered, but her voice had softened. "You taught me a lesson in kindness. Consider this, my homework." They walked outside, paper bags in hand. The breeze tugged gently at Amara's damp hair. Ethan hesitated. "Do you have a few minutes? There's a tiny cafe nearby. Best hot cocoa in town." Amara was about to decline, but Lena chirped, "Please, Mama, I'm not ready to go home." Ethan tilted his head, his eyes sparkling with just enough charm. Amara sighed, then nodded. The cafe was small and cozy, next to a bakery with cream wallpaper and golden lights. The 3 of them squeezed into a corner booth. It was a tight fit, but oddly comfortable. Ethan told a few terrible jokes about his fake job as a restaurant operations consultant. Amara shared stories from the hospital cafeteria: cranky doctors, kind nurses. Lena chimed in with her childlike observations, sending them into laughter again and again. By the time they stepped outside, the rain had stopped. Ethan walked them back to the car and opened the door for Amara, a gesture he hadn't used in years but still remembered. "Thanks for tonight," she said. "Nope, thank you for not running away from me." "I didn't exactly not run," Amara said honestly. "I just wasn't sure how I was supposed to feel." Ethan didn't press. He simply smiled, slipped his hands into his coat pockets, and watched the old car disappear into the foggy night. He didn't know what he was starting. He only knew he didn't want it to end. After over 2 months of growing close, Ethan Marlowe had become a constant in Amara Collins' life. He was more than just a weekend companion. He was a quiet presence that made things easier, picking Lena up from school, grocery runs with Amara, and occasionally covering bills without saying a word. Each time Lena laughed when she saw him, Amara's guard lowered a little more. Her scars hadn't vanished, but somehow Ethan made them hurt less. Gently, silently, patiently. That afternoon, Amara had finished her hospital kitchen shift and stopped by the local bakery where she worked part-time. She packed a few fresh banana muffins for Ethan. He had mentioned having a full day of meetings, and she thought a surprise might lift his spirits. The building he worked in stood tall and modern in the city's heart, all glass and steel. Amara walked in, clutching the warm box of muffins, whispering to herself, "Just drop them off and leave." "I'm here to see Ethan Marlowe," she told the receptionist. "He's in a meeting. You're welcome to wait," the woman smiled. Marlowe? The name echoed strangely. Amara pulled out her phone and typed, "Ethan Marlowe." Her screen lit up instantly. Ethan Marlowe is co-founder and CEO of Marlowe Market, the fastest-growing grocery chain in the Pacific Northwest. Estimated net worth over $600 million, 0 cents. A chill ran down her spine. Every vague mention of restaurant consulting, every time he avoided personal questions, each coffee she'd paid for, it all clicked into place like puzzle pieces falling into a painful, perfect fit. The conference room doors opened. Ethan stepped out, all smiles after what looked like a successful meeting, but when his eyes met hers, his face fell. "What are you doing here?" he asked quietly, warily. Amara rose. The muffin box in her hand was still warm. Her voice was not. "I came to bring you something sweet, and instead, I found something I never asked for." "Mara, I can explain." "Explain what? That you're not who you said you were? That everything I knew about you was carefully staged?" He stepped closer. "I was afraid. You know what it's like to be judged for your circumstances. I didn't want to lose the one real thing I had. With you." Amara clenched the box tighter. "I'm not leaving because you're wealthy, Ethan. I'm leaving because you chose to lie. From the start." Her phone buzzed. Lena was waiting downstairs. Without another word, Amara placed the muffin box on the receptionist's desk and walked away. Ethan didn't chase her. He simply watched, hands trembling, heart twisting. That night, inside his luxurious penthouse, Ethan sat motionless by the window. He held Lena's forgotten scarf in his hands, still faintly scented with milk and lavender. The silence in the room was deafening. For the first time in years, he felt completely hollow. Not because he'd been exposed, but because he had lost the only person who ever saw him without a price tag. A week had passed since Amara walked out of that building, carrying a broken heart and the gaze of someone who no longer believed in anything. Ethan had tried to call countless times. He texted, emailed, even asked a friend working at the hospital to check her shifts. But Amara never replied. Every unanswered message, every silent ringtone became another deep cut across his pride, and the deepest regret he had ever known. One Thursday morning, Ethan sat in his office when the door burst open. Not Amara, but two suited men. Robert, head of legal, and Derek, his longtime advisor since Marlowe Market's early days. "We understand you've been distracted," Robert began, voice polite yet calculated. "But Ethan, your image matters. A relationship with someone like her, it's not sustainable." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Amara is a mother, a woman of integrity. Don't speak about her that way." Derek gave a tight smile. "We get it. But the truth is, media spins everything, so we've arranged a quiet solution." He placed a brown leather briefcase on Ethan's desk. $750,000, Robert said flatly. "If she accepts, disappears, and signs a non-contact agreement, this all goes away." Ethan stood up, fury rising in his voice. "You just tried to bribe the woman I love in front of me?" "It's not a bribe, it's protection. Get out of my office." That afternoon, Robert and Derek made their move anyway, behind Ethan's back. They tracked Amara to a quiet countryside town where she had taken unpaid leave and moved in with her mother. She was outside, hands dusted with flour, teaching Lena to bake almond cookies. "We represent Mr. Ethan Marlowe," Robert said, flashing a business card. Amara froze. "I have nothing to say to him." "But we do." Derek opened the briefcase and placed it on the porch. "Just sign here, take this money, and never contact Ethan again." She looked down. Stacks of crisp bills, neatly bundled, like they could purchase someone's silence. "What kind of woman do you think I am?" Amara asked, voice soft but sharp. "We think you're smart, practical." She bent down, as if to sign, but then suddenly grabbed the briefcase and flung the money into the air. Cash scattered everywhere, into the dirt, the bushes, the muddy steps. Amara stood tall, facing them both, eyes burning. I'm the kind of woman who teaches her daughter that love can't be bought, that kindness isn't transactional. And you think I'd walk away from someone I love for this dead paper? She stepped forward, pointing a flour-stained finger right at them. Go back and tell Ethan. He broke my trust with a lie. But you just stomped on it with money. And I won't forgive either. She slammed the gate shut. Ethan got Robert's call 2 hours later. She refused. And, rather fiercely, Ethan didn't answer. He simply stood, walked into the boardroom with Robert and Derek's nameplates, and slammed them onto the table. You're both fired. Effective immediately. You can't. I just did? That night, he drove alone to the coast, the very place he once walked with Amara and Lena, back when everything was simple. He sat by the cliffs, watching the waves crash endlessly. In his hand was the little purple cat umbrella Lena had once gifted him. The ocean wind cut through his coat, but nothing was colder than the hollow ache inside him, not from being rejected, but because he finally understood he had lost the most precious thing in his life, not from a single mistake, but from the price of silence and the cowardice of fear. But sometimes rejection is the wake-up call we never knew we needed. And when everything falls apart, there's only one path left: to let go, or to begin again, exactly where it all went wrong. The ocean wind howled along the cliffs as Ethan sat frozen on the cold stone bench, eyes fixed on the endless sea. Tonight there were no strategy plans, no profit charts, only him. Raw, stripped down, surrounded by the terrifying quiet of his own choices. It had been a long time since Ethan dared name the truth. He was lonely. Not the kind wrapped in wealth and meetings, the kind that sinks in when no one wants to stay. Not for your title, not for your bank account, just for you. And now Amara was gone. Not because of what he had, but because of what he had failed to give: honesty. The next morning, Ethan walked into his office alone. He called an emergency board meeting. No lawyers, no assistants, just him. In the tall glass room overlooking the city, Ethan made an announcement that left every executive stunned. I will step down from operations within 6 months, he said. And during that time, I'm establishing a foundation for single mothers in the culinary arts. It'll be named after her. Her? One board member asked. The Amara Collins Foundation, Ethan replied. I want to give women like Amara the chance to learn, grow, and stand strong on their own, no matter their circumstances. There was silence. A few looked at him with pity. But he didn't need pity. He needed a fresh start. In the weeks that followed, Ethan declined all press interviews. Instead, he quietly visited community cooking classes, spoke with single mothers, and listened to their stories. He leveraged his network to get scholarships from culinary institutes and funded free meal programs for struggling families. He also began therapy, real therapy. For the first time, he sat down and looked his pain in the face. His mother's early death, a marriage that fell apart when his ex-wife loved his image more than his heart. Ethan had never shown that side of himself until Amara. Losing her forced him to realize something simple yet brutal. There are no shortcuts to decency. Everything must be built on truth, even when it hurts. 3 months later, on a rainy afternoon, Amara's mother received an envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from Ethan. Not an apology, not a plea, just a quiet recounting of what he'd been doing. Not to win back love, but to earn the lesson he had learned from it. Inside the envelope was also a photo. Women in the first ever Amara Collins Foundation cooking class, covered in flour, baking with joy. On the back was a handwritten line. These are women you've changed, even without knowing it. Thank you for teaching me what money never could. Ethan. Amara's mother didn't say a word. She simply placed the letter on the table and looked toward her daughter preparing dinner in the kitchen. "There's mail," she said softly, "from someone you thought could never change." Amara picked it up, read slowly. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. She just whispered, "I don't know if I forgive him yet, but maybe he's learning how to be the man I once believed in." As for Ethan, he didn't wait for miracles. He didn't expect Amara to return. He continued working at the foundation, kept listening, and kept atoning, not with wealth, but with quiet, steady action. For the first time in his life, Ethan Marlowe was learning how to love, starting with being honest with himself. The first rainy day after months of sun found Ethan standing alone in the parking lot where it all began. Same corner, the spot where his groceries had once scattered across the wet cement, and where a stranger had knelt beside him in the storm, helping him gather not just his things, but the broken pieces of a life he didn't realize was empty. He had planned everything: no music, no roses, just the rain, a little purple cat umbrella, and a ring box he'd been carrying for over a month, waiting for the right moment. Amara had no idea. It was her mother who made it happen, the woman who read Ethan's letter, saw the photo, and realized he wasn't the same man anymore. That afternoon, she simply told Amara, "Go outside, sweetheart, someone's waiting in the rain." Amara thought it was a joke, but then she saw the familiar car. She saw Ethan, and she saw the tiny cat umbrella Lena had once handed him, now held close to his chest. A quiet symbol that he hadn't forgotten anything, not even the smallest things. Ethan stepped forward, soaked to the bone, but with eyes clearer than ever. "I'm not asking you to come back," he said, his voice low, steady. "I just want you to know I'm no longer the man you walked away from." Amara said nothing. The rain streamed down her hair, the droplets clinging to her lashes like unshed tears. "I rebuilt everything from what you taught me: truth, kindness, and love that doesn't need to be bought." He dropped to one knee in the same place. On the cold concrete, beneath the rain, the box opened. No diamonds, no dazzle, just a simple gold ring engraved on the inside. "Worth more than gold. Amara Collins," he said, eyes never leaving hers. "If you ever saw something good in me, then today I'm asking for the chance to become that man, every day, beside you and Lena." The wind blew, rain kissed their cheeks, and Amara finally laughed, not out of humor, but from release, from joy, from a love she thought was long buried. She didn't need to speak. She just stepped forward, knelt beside him, and nodded, gently but with absolute certainty. Ethan rose. They embraced in the middle of the storm as if the world had melted away, leaving only the two of them. And somewhere from the backseat of the car, Lena poked her head out and yelled, "Mom said yes, right. Can I be the flower girl?" Laughter echoed through the empty lot. One rainstorm, one apology, one promise. And love returned. Life after the proposal wasn't a fairy tale. Amara and Ethan both knew that. There were no lavish weddings or glamorous honeymoons. Instead, they stepped into something even more real, a shared life built on honesty, patience, and learning how to love again. Amara didn't leave her quiet coastal town, and Ethan never asked her to. He rented a small home nearby where the three of them could grow vegetables, bake cookies, and listen to Lena's endless stories about flying cats. Their wedding took place 6 months later in the garden behind Amara's mother's house. Lena was the flower girl, naturally, and also read a short blessing in her crooked, heartfelt handwriting. "I hope Daddy Ethan never makes Mommy cry again, but if he does, he has to bake 100 cookies to say sorry." Laughter filled the garden. None of the CEOs, journalists, or politicians Ethan once knew were invited. Just neighbors, friends, and women from the Amara Collins Foundation. Those who had once been given a chance and returned now to say thank you. After the wedding, they lived a peaceful life. Ethan began teaching free Saturday cooking classes for single fathers. Amara opened a small bakery that featured family recipes passed down through generations. And Lena, she remained the heart of it all, now joined by a baby brother named Milo, who Ethan joked had all his mother's stubbornness packed into 10 pounds. Years later, Ethan was invited to speak at an event honoring community leaders and changemakers. He didn't talk about market shares or business milestones. He spoke about 3 things: a purple cat umbrella, a woman with flour on her hands, and a little girl who once taught him forgiveness with a toothless smile. And when he stepped off stage, waiting backstage was Amara, her fingers slipping into his. Still that firm, grounding hold he remembered from the beginning. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "Not as proud as I am of you," Ethan replied. They had come a long way, from one rainstorm to an entire new life. And the most beautiful part was, it all began with one simple act: kindness in the rain.